Okay, so we have a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and today it's great to have Roham here. You're the CEO of Dapper Labs. You've been somebody who's an incredible pioneer in the blockchain space. You figured out a way to make fun, engaging games and gamified projects in the space that help make it mainstream. Without CryptoKitties, we may not have had this whole NFT wave, and really show that you can have consumer products from blockchain technology. And you did this with NBA Top Shot, which got a lot of traction. And this is what you've been building is based on this opportunity to really make blockchain a mass mainstream opportunity and technology. So I'm excited to have you here and to get into your story. Awesome. So where did your passion initially for entrepreneurship, business, tech kind of begin? Like, when did you think you were going to go on this path?
So I was into tech way longer than I assumed it was going to be my path. I built my first website, maybe I was 9 years old. Started making some money through kind of affiliate networks and early Amazon stuff, but I couldn't claim it because I was a teenager, Iranian citizen living in Dubai at the time. And so I got into tech early on, but I always assumed my career would be in medicine and biology. And that's when I went to college at Stanford, I majored in biology. I got my master's in biology, but was doing tech off the side. I was, building little tools and just having a lot of fun with it. And it took me until I graduated to realize, you know what, we should probably make a career out of this. So it was always my passion, but I didn't actually decide to jump in until, I guess I was 19, 20 at the time, and interned for a couple startups, joined a small venture capital firm, helped them raise their next round, and then within I guess it was 2.5, 3 years, started Axiom Zen to kind of have my own little playground to innovate and play around in.
Mm-hmm. So was that kind of like your plan initially was, let me learn the skills of venture capital, understand how these deals are made, and then kind of branch into my own thing?
Not really. I actually had kind of an existential crisis senior year in college, and I sat down with my academic advisor, who's the actually incredible person. He's got a great set of books out there. His name is Robert Sapolsky. He's a sort of human behavioral biologist, but he studies bonobo monkeys in particular to kind of get insights on human evolution. So anyway, he gave me the advice that, hey, look, the thing you might feel right now, because all your colleagues and your sort of classmates are finding their next jobs and talking about salaries and all that stuff, is that you're running out of time. But the reality is the only thing you have is time, and so you should experiment and you should try a bunch of things before committing, because the last thing you want to do is go down the 10-year track to becoming a doctor and then realize that's not what you want to do, or spend 10 years at a biotech firm before deciding that's not your true passion, whatever it is. So so when I joined the group, I actually didn't. I was kind of playing around, and I was trying to learn. I was trying to figure out what to do next. But I soon realized it's just such a cool opportunity, because you see hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs, some of which go on to build absolutely incredible companies and that you can be a part of, some of which you can't be a part of, and you sort of still can watch their journeys. And then you make so many mistakes, but in a sense, you're never behind the wheel, so it's not you making the mistakes. It's a little bit of a it's kind of a bittersweet sort of. The successes are bittersweet, and the failures are also. You try to kind of empathize with the entrepreneur, but you're not really. So, it was more of a just great group of people, great opportunity to learn, and so I stayed for a few years, and then the call to kind of try to take more risks than I could within a sort of that venture capital box, I guess, led me to start Axiom Zen. And Axiom Zen, we never really had our purpose was to sort of have a playground to innovate in and to play around in and explore and kind of be early to the next wave, rather than a sort of crisp idea at that time of what that next wave would necessarily be, or what product we wanted to build. And in fact, we built all kinds of different products.
Mm-hmm. So how did the idea for CryptoKitties happen when you were, in this venture studio? Like, I'm sure you were trying a bunch of different things. Like, how did you guys land on this idea?
Good question. I mean, it was credit goes to obviously my team, and I think it was Mac Flavel, our head of creative at the time, who who said the words "Let's put cats on the blockchain" first, but it was kind of a journey to look at. And we had done so much experimentation in AR and VR. We had actually built a little bird catching game. It was kind of like Pokemon Go, but with collectible birds that weren't at the time on blockchain. So we had drawn of a lot of experimentation we did in consumer on that side. But my CTO Dieter, he mined his first Bitcoin in 2010, and so we've been thinking about this concept of like open digital systems, digital sovereignty. What does it mean to sort of have a customer control their own data, and of course, eventually digital assets. Data is sort of a more generic wrapper around it. So we've been playing around with it, and we really wanted to find an application of smart contracts and on-chain logic that went beyond financialization, but could be something people could play with, but also didn't. People were talking at the time. I'm sure you remember the ICO boom. Hey, let's put real estate on chain. Let's put, let's get all land and title on chain. Of course, like eventually, I still believe those things will happen, but they will take so much longer than I think people anticipate. And so we wanted to pick something that was like almost like a toy. And I'm sure you've seen Chris Dixon, who became our co-lead investor with Fred Wilson. He had written an article. The next big thing we'll start looking at as a toy, and that kind of inspired us at Axiom Zen. We built a lot of serious stuff like Zen Hub and Routify, I can talk about how those kind of had a blockchain sort of inspiration, or rather like made us appreciate open systems better because of the difficulties we faced there. But we always wanted to build kind of, what are kind of next generation consumer products, and we wanted to build something lightweight with blockchain, that with crypto, that was more than just currency.
And why was blockchain so interesting to you, originally? Like what intrigued you to want to build in blockchain?
Well, so I talked a little bit about Zen Hub, Routify. So we built some serious things at Axiom Zen when we started it, because it was a self-funded kind of effort, and so we wanted to make products that made revenue. And so the two products we built first were Routify. It was a route optimization API. So other companies built it into their stack. So DoorDash, FedEx, some other companies used us. And then Zen Hub was a project management solution that kind of plugged itself into GitHub. So it was features that sort of injected themselves into the GitHub UI. It was used by companies like Apple, Microsoft. It still is. Has 3,000 plus kind of enterprise customers, but both of them really struggled with being this like small components of wider systems. And so, we saw the value of software that kind of works together, clicks together like Lego pieces, but then saw the limitation of like closed systems, which we have today. Right now, you don't know how your data is being used. We don't know how this, but like we have very limited visibility into what software is governing our daily lives. And kind of software developers have very limited control over an ability to serve their customers outside of the Google, Microsoft kind of big, and AI is sort of exacerbating that, making it way worse than it ever was. So we've always been like attuned to this issue of how can we have open digital systems with individual sovereignty over one's own data and digital assets, and ability to sort of look at what a piece of software is doing with my data. And blockchain kind of, the promise was, hey, look, at least you can agree on who owns what. But then you sort of squint at it and you say, well, wait a second. It's basically like every smart contract is like an API that no one can alter. And so we were developers that were used to like building stuff on APIs that change all the time, and it broke all our code all the time. And so this idea that, hey, we can build even on top of Bitcoin, which we did in 2014, and nothing the Bitcoin developers can do can break our game. It's just insane, crazy, kind of innovative to think about, and also empowering, where you don't have to ask anyone for API keys. No one can kick you off for being from a given country, or from not having, not being of a certain age or whatever it is. And you just realize that that's the future of software, because every time we've made it easier for people to build software, you've gotten a new sort of kick up of productivity and just experimentation, and things being built that no one would have assumed would be profitable previously. So anyway, that's what excited us, is like just open digital systems is now possible.
So Roham, was there like a personal experience that made you care so much about data and open digital systems and having the control in the hands of the users?
Well, I mean, as a kid, the idea that I couldn't get my money because I was, I was both, a kid and also an Iranian citizen that lived in Dubai and didn't have the right, didn't have a S social security number. I didn't know what that stood for. Like that was partially what attracted me initially to Bitcoin, but it was kind of the Zen Hub and Routific
Mhm.
experiences of like, we are at a severe disadvantage because we live in these wider systems, and if we get too powerful, we can get throttled over here. If these guys change their business model on us, which of course GitHub ended up introducing GitHub projects and introducing a competitor to our product several years ago, and so things have evolved since then. But the point being that that kind of attuned us to, wait a second, we want to build a product for their customer, and their customer wants to use our product, but they're a digital middleman, which can actually interrupt the customer experience and gatekeep that customer's own data. The customer
Mhm.
doesn't have the ability to provide us with their own information. It's kind of like crazy when you think about it. And why would that be in a world where there is an alternative? Which, of course, crypto systems have sort of been very early stage for the longest time. And when we built
Mhm.
CryptoKitties, out the gate, it was clear this thing's not gonna, like, the blockchain can't handle more than 10,000 concurrent users. And things have improved a little bit since then, and layer twos, et cetera, sort of make things even better. But the infrastructure has evolved a lot over the last 10 years.
Mhm. So you were part of this early wave to help push the infrastructure to evolve because of the demand of users. With CryptoKitties, did you expect it to have as much success as it did, and why do you think it was so successful?
We did expect it to have a great. We thought it was. We knew it was going to be fire because we had been testing it all summer, and our
Mhm.
entire office was obsessed. And when we ran our first playtest at ETH Waterloo, which was really the first time we had sort of introduced it to the wider Ethereum community, it just went crazy, and we won the hackathon for our sort of analytics product. But like the talk of the hackathon was this like cat game, and it was clear we saw in the metrics, right? We built a lot of consumer products. Usually, the way it works is in consumer products is no one cares. You build something, you show it to someone, they won't even play your game, or they'll sort of just say something. Yeah, that was a great job, good work. Whereas here, people were hungry, they were excited, they were talking about it, they were getting their friends in, and so it was very clear it was going to be, something major. But what wasn't clear was just how much of a damaging kind of how much of a pressure we put on the infrastructure.
Mhm.
And very soon after we launched, we were getting maybe death threats is aggressive, but very angry messages from on social media from people who said, "Hey, you're affecting my livelihood. You're interrupting my ICO. You can't. I was raising money for my product." And of course, we couldn't do anything about it. Everything is on chain and out of our control at that point. But it really 5,000 concurrent users sort of ground everything to a halt. But of course, it was the right thing for the industry, galvanized a lot of very innovative, smart people to sort of start trying to solve this scalability problem. But I would say here we are, 6 years later, and it's yes, we've solved kind of a throughput problem, but when it comes to user experience, when it comes to even the developer experience, it's taken a long time to kind of get to a place we're proud of.
Mhm. So once you had this initial success from CryptoKitties and it got a lot of traction, how did you take advantage of that from a fundraising standpoint, from building out your team? What were some of the steps you took when you were really getting very hot from this?
Well, I was in a different situation than most entrepreneurs because I had, Axiom Zen was about maybe 100 people at the time. The CryptoKitties team itself, we went from 2 people for most of the summer to 2 to 4 people most of the summer, to very quickly 6 and 12 by the time we launched. And as soon as it sort of exploded, we brought in so many more people from across the company. So we're about 25, 30 people, sort of already by the end of 2017. And in Dapper Labs, we got so much inbound from investors, and I can give you stories forever on kind of just the funny conversations I had with um, some of the world's smartest people, but of course didn't understand some of the dynamics of crypto, and we ended up kind of choosing 2 people who we thought were kind of understood our business the best and the dynamics of, like, that was what was most important to me in that first round of, like, bring in an investor that knows what they're getting into, because this is not going to be a 6 month journey. It's going to be a multi-year journey, and we want to do it the right way. And so Chris Dixon and Fred Wilson Andreessen and Union Square Ventures had been investing in crypto since 2012, Coinbase, et cetera, and who are also investing in the next generation of consumer for even longer than that. And so kind of, I felt they were the ones that understood what both the possibilities as well as the potential sort of, it might take a lot longer than people expect. In those early days, people were saying, oh, CryptoKitties has solved, ownership for sort of everything and everyone. And of course, we were in a bubble of a bubble in terms of kind of a small group of people really being familiar with us. So we had, governments coming to us for, hey, can we use this technology to trade real estate? And we had big gaming companies, some of the world's largest game companies in the world wanting to. No one sort of almost believed that, hey, look, like everything's very raw right now, and it's actually, it is the beginnings of how things should be, but there's a journey between now and then to kind of get the platforms, get the public ready, right? Soon after that, you sort of had the crypto correction of 2018 and 2019, and the reality is that it takes some time for people to sort of understand the dynamics here beyond just a get rich quick kind of initial sort of wave. So anyway, that's my quick answer. I don't know if that answers the question how I took advantage of it, but really, because of the explosive growth of the product, we were in a privileged position of people coming to us, and so we used the time to not optimize for the amount of money. We could have raised more than twice the money. We could have raised at a much higher valuation. We could have sold the company at a high valuation, but we believe this is a cultural moment, a long-term, shift in how software is going to be built. We want to be a part of it. We want to have a positive influence on it, and we wanted the right kind of people around the table to help us get there.
Yeah, that answers it. So, what do you think now, Roham? Like you've already experimented with CryptoKitties, NBA Top Shot's another example. These are pretty consumer, forward-facing. The average person can use Top Shot, without really having to know so much about blockchain. Like, what do you think it's going to actually take now to make this space something that's a part of everyone's life every day, or really mainstream?
Well, I think it's happening slowly, and I think some with CryptoKitties and Top Shot, I feel like we were on Dapper Labs was on sort of the front lines of sort of something weird that people didn't expect, that did bring in the next wave of folks. And I think this is the first time that Dapper doesn't have the burden of having to build out at the platform layer. So for the last, year plus, Dapper has not had any significant involvement in anything that happens on the flow side. And the Flow Foundation, as a totally independent foundation, is running that network. And so Dapper is fully focused on applications, and what both the sports side, how can we go way deeper into the fan journey, build out games also that people can play with their collectibles. So if you play NBA Fast Break, NBA Top Shot is no longer just digital trading cards. It's digital trading cards that you can play with. You can play with your friends with. You can play against your friends. And by next season, that's going to be much more mature and on-chain, where third-party developers can build functionality on top of that. You can imagine different forms of leagues, different forms of bartering, people putting up their own stake, whatever it might be. And so we want Top Shot not just to be a site, but kind of an ecosystem, a currency that can spread among the entire NBA, the ecosystem. And I think that our sports products can still be that vehicle of, there's hundreds of millions of sports fans, but there's also 100 million plus folks that are super active, super engaged, spending money on their fandom, whether it's in ticketing or sports betting or fantasy or whatever it is. And those people are the obvious folks to kind of bring into the next wave. And I see very interesting things happening on the, not necessarily deep gaming in terms of there's a lot of money has been spent on sort of multi-year builds, but small teams building small projects that are growing through viral networks like Telegram, but then, maybe potentially farming tokens that exist on other blockchains like Flow, Ethereum, or others. I think there's a lot of interesting early signals there, and if you remember early days of the App Store and sort of social games with Facebook, the earliest versions are maybe games that aren't so much fun, but they're something new and they're growing so fast that the next generation of developers they represent kind of inspiration of what could happen. It's like if this thing can get 1 million users, what would I do with 1 million users, and how could I retain them? So we think a lot about that, and I think the next sort of breakout moment for consumer crypto is happening right now. You see, people have different opinions on meme coins and celebrity coins and this kind of thing, but no one can deny it's engaging a new community of users of these networks. People that I wouldn't have imagined are messaging me on Instagram asking, "Hey, have you used Peppermint Sniper bot on Solana?" Which is kind of like, how did you get to this deep of the rabbit hole? And it's just very interesting to see kind of the everyone's willingness. And I guess we're all financialized, we're all digital natives, we're all everyone's following Roaring Kitty and GameStop and just part of the conversation here. And it's a way for us to connect on in a digital way. So potentially that zone is interesting, but you got to keep people safe. You can't, this is my point about these MEV bots is or sort of sniping on Solana, whatever it is. Like, the what we're wary of is the way this cycle happens is it kind of grows, attracts interest, attracts capital, attracts greedy people, and then you start having kind of those rugs and those negative experiences that sometimes are price movements, sometimes are straight up hacks or scams or whatever it might be, and that kind of provides that chilling effect on the market, on the adoption, and crypto has suffered from that way more than other technologies because of just how much money is involved.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you've come up with a bunch of different ideas at Dapper Labs that have, been trying to make this consumer crypto really forward facing. One of which, like we talked about it before, was like NBA Top Shot. So can you just share, Rome, like a little bit about like how the idea for that happened and why the NBA was such an ideal partner for it?
Yeah, I mean, and maybe it's a good timeline for how long it takes to get these things done. So we started talking to the NBA shortly after launching CryptoKitties. They saw the success of that, and they've always been a very forward-facing, tech-centric organization. And so we wanted to figure out things to do with that. And the astute listeners will remember there was a Steph Curry kitty at one point released in CryptoKitties, and so we've been. And there was even an NFL Players Association kitty. We worked with the NFL Players Association early on as well. And this concept of sort of digital ownership, trading, collectibles, obviously online gamification, it was sports organizations really understood that, and of course the application of like digital assets and their ability to sort of be almost like a IP protection mechanism for IP owners and kind of getting that royalty, et cetera, they really understood it immediately, but it took more than a year of conversations, of lawyer to lawyer sort of explanations of documenting, hey, what is an NFT? Why is it a security? What would the user experience be? What's the how would sort of the rights sit between the league, us, and then the customer before kind of folks got comfortable with it. And if you think about it, this is the first time that an IP owner can partner with a third-party company like Dapper to build a digital product that the customer owns and can take with them, regardless of what happens to the relationship between the IP owner and the digital manufacturer. In every physical world, that's exactly how it works. You hire someone to make you some jerseys, they make some jerseys, they sell it. In the future, you might give that license to somebody else, and it kind of all works. But in the digital world, you sort of have this situation where it's kind of you trust someone with something and then they actually own it. You give your IP to a social media or a streaming site, they own those users, you don't own those users, so you end up being kind of disconnected. And so that's why the NBA, even from the beginning, has treated us less like a just someone they give their IP to, and more as, hey, let's build something together. And in fact, that's why we extended our partnership for so long. That's why we're leaning in this season with both the NBA and NFL, because they recognize we're building something that effectively belongs to them and the fans. Of course, it happens right now in our platform, and if we have the best platform for it, it'll continue happening on our platform. But it is an example of like, a digital platform shouldn't it be able to kind of build these walled gardens around someone else's community, and it harms the both the community as well as the sort of community creator or IP owner if you think about it.
Mm-hmm. So just the last question that I have, what do you aspire to accomplish now at this point in your life and your career? Like, what do you want to be? What are some of your short-term and let's say long-term goals over the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I mean, right now, job's not finished. I'm very focused on kind of finishing this phase of transition of basically closed digital systems to open digital systems. And we're at this like fork in the road with the primacy of AI, where do we live in an AI sovereign world or a like human sort? Do humans have digital sovereignty in this world that we're going to live in, or are we subservient to whatever kind of ecosystem we're sort of connected to? And do we have ownership over our own data? Do we have ownership over our own assets? Is there a technology that exists for software to kind of be outside of the control of anybody and be trustworthy and trustable by everybody? And I think that we're at that fork in the road. So that's my mission, and whether it's 5 years, 10 years, or 50 years, we think that this is such a critical mission. And the more important things like augmented reality, virtual reality are, the more our worlds are digital, the more software governs our lives, whether it's AI driven or not, the more important this idea of a sort of decentralized infrastructure for software is. And I think like there's so few people that are thinking about it from a perspective of real mainstream people, and kind of every piece of the technology we've built is about that. And I think we're within taking the right swings to sort of connect the dots between the users we're bringing on board, and then opening it up for creators and developers and just independent people to be able to take advantage of that, build value for it. So that's my short version, is to try and achieve our mission of mainstream adoption, but also get application millions of people use that, thousands, tens of thousands of developers and creators build awesome tools and products and services on that.
Well, I definitely like the mission. I think it's great, Rom. I appreciate you coming on, sharing your story, and I'm excited to see how you really make this technology something that's a part of everyone's lives. You've already made it fun and gamified, which was something really new for the space, through some of the projects you built up, and definitely looking forward to seeing more of your innovations. So thanks for coming on.